How's everybody doing? Good. All right. So I brought, just for classroom participation, a couple things to give away, and maybe to get you a little bit more involved, hopefully. Does anybody in here play Ultimate Frisbee? Okay, so maybe there's someone really far up. I tried to get it to you, sorry. So we play Ultimate Frisbees on Wednesdays and Fridays, so tomorrow's game day. And it's fun to get out and run around, and we've been playing now for a long time, so me longer than some of the other guys out there, but it's great to get out and run around and have a lot of fun. I'd like to take you a little bit through my current company, InMoment. I founded the company 13 years ago, and we are a global company. We collect, as was mentioned by Steve, the experiences of guests. That's what we do. We're there to try to collect information on people's experiences. We currently have about 330 employees. Our offices are headquarters here in Salt Lake. We've got 170 employees here in Salt Lake. We have an office in Toronto with about 110 employees, and then the remainder over in the UK in Birmingham. And it's been a lot of fun as we've been growing up and becoming the kind of company we are. Maybe to talk a little bit about what we've done. Let me see if I can get my clicker to work there. Last year we collected 140 million reviews. Does anybody here know how many reviews Yelp has? In their 11-year history, how many reviews has Yelp collected? 77 million. So we collected almost twice what Yelp did in 11 years last year, to kind of put it in perspective. So we're behind a lot of these businesses out there you see, get me clear, and collect that information for them so they can listen to their customers. We're that conduit, that transparency there to make that information flow back and forth. And it's been one of those kind of experiences as we've grown up as a business. It's changed a lot. When we started out, we focused heavily on collecting a metric, if you will, about a customer's experience. So asking a lot of structured questions and stuff like that. And we did it all in the cloud. We have, I don't know, probably around 5 million minutes of long distance any given month. People dialing in over the phone to go through and leave feedback. You may have seen one of these, printed on a receipt somewhere. Let's see if I've got one here. But let me take you first through some of our core principles. Our first is that we're simple and elegant. We're bold. We're innovative. We are human. And we're invested. Something that we try to embody as who we are when we're out there is we want to make sure that we're giving the best experience to our clients so they give the best experience to their customers. One of those is what we call red shoes. Oops, I jumped too far. I'm wearing my red shoes today. The idea of red shoes is to stand out, to be, make a stand, make such a great experience that the next time people think of you, they remember your red shoes, that you stand out like that way. So we give out red shoes awards. Anytime we hire a new employee, we give them a set of red shoes and tell them to stand out, not to be idle, not to sit back, but to do something great. Some of the other things we do, oops, I'm just going to do it this way. That's not working too well. The other things we do is collect that information, distribute it. In any given month, we have over 400,000 employees log into our platform to understand how they're helping or not helping their customers. Covering around 200,000 store locations across the United States and internationally. So we collect a lot of information and we disseminate a lot of information and help guide people. So you've probably seen this on a receipt. How many of you have eaten the Costa Vida just down the street? Okay. Well, we get around 500 reviews every month from that particular location. So a lot of you are trying to get that for the free chips and salsa, I suspect. And so that's great. Do that every time. It's nice. I like it. I appreciate it. It's a great way for us to go through and provide a nice flow of information where, as a general rule, everybody likes to talk about their experiences. They like to say how things went. And they like to talk about it and be more human, right? So if you have a good experience, share it. You tell it to your friends, hey, there's a new place down the street I just went and ate at. Go talk about it. Well, that's what we're interested in, is collecting those interactions. So one such one, we just recently added video this last year, and we just launched it at our conference here a couple weeks ago. And this was one of the videos we captured for a rental car company of ours. And I had the privilege of sharing this with their executive team. And we put it into a show reel, so there's multiple videos, but this is just a 1-minute video. I'll just play this for you.
I have never experienced a car rental place that has had a ramp or lift or any kind of wheelchair accessible van. And I think that a lot of people with disabilities would like to travel, but have had the same experience as I have had. And it is frustrating. It really is frustrating. I recommend that car rental places have at least one wheelchair accessible van, whether it's driver capable or not. It should at least have a lift or a ramp that a wheelchair can get into. At least one car. That would make my life so much better and travel so much easier.
So, how do you think that meeting went with the executive? It was interesting talking with them and sharing this video. Now, we could have shown text and read a text. Have you ever been moved emotionally like that by a text message? Not so much, right? And that's something we try to do, is we're trying to collect the real emotions of people's experiences. I think we all felt it, right? I mean, that's just a powerful experience. I could have listened to her on the phone. It wouldn't have been as powerful as seeing her. And that's the whole thing. When you think about communication, it's made into 3 parts. You've got the actual words, you've got the audio, the vocal side of it, and then the actual hand manipulations, right? All the verbal, nonverbal cues. And when you pull all this all together, it's powerful. It has the ability to move people. We showed a show reel at Mattress Firm. They've got like 3,500 locations. They're a really big retailer. And we showed the show reel of their guests. They had to come in and bought different beds and stuff, and they could not believe the information. Now, the reality is it was like 10 videos, and we collect about 100,000 reviews from them every month. So it's like nothing compared to how much other information we have. But it's using that information to go through and drive the point home. So it's been really fun for us to kind of advance into this. Now, we go through and disseminate the information in a lot of different ways, using tablets and mobile devices that the store managers can go through and pull up. If one of you had a bad experience at Costa Vida and you basically went through and gave a bad review and said, I want to be called back by a manager, they actually get an alert right on their phone, right there on the floor. They'll look at it and go, wow, someone just had a bad experience. I want to call them and go through and close that loop. Make sure I recover that customer. How much do you think the lifetime value of a customer for Domino's is? What do you think the lifetime value of a Domino's customer is? Some of you are Domino's customers, right? I'm thinking there. Maybe, maybe not. $10,000. Think about that. So think about every lost customer. We had a pizza brand in our office this last week on Thursday. And they had 9,600 customers that had an experience that wanted to have a manager call them back. And no call was made. How much lifetime value was lost because those 9,600 people were not called? Right? Starts to add up really quick when you start times it by 10,000. Adds up real quick. Now we deliver information to executives as well, sending out various different types of dashboards using a whole host of different sets of tools to deliver that information. One of the more interesting products is the OpenTel product. Here's where we allow brands, if they want, we will publish the reviews we collect for them online. So last year we published around 40 million reviews through our OpenTel framework. To kind of put that in perspective, we only keep reviews for 6 months, then we throw them away. Why do you think you would throw a review after 6 months away? Any ideas? Yeah.
Sometimes the problem's been solved or just don't really apply in the business right now.
No, that's right, that's right. Does anyone know how Yelp calculates their score? It's an 11-year average. Okay, just to kind of put that in perspective, some of you would be maybe baptismal age at the last time that first review was given. It's kind of crazy to think about, right? It just kind of makes me laugh when, bless you. But it's kind of crazy to think about. So yeah, 11 years for review. Considering the fact in the food service sector, they have a 100% turnover in their employee staff annually. That means they rehire every employee every year. That means there's no one there, which means on average about 6 months. So no reason to keep the data after that. So we're trying to challenge the model of how reviews are done. Also, our reviews are only given by people who actually had a receipt and certified that they ate there versus anybody just posting. Anyway, it's kind of interesting. We actually view that as a way to help our brands out. I like to switch into a little bit about some of my experiences. and talk about, well, a couple different examples. What I like to call the difference between VC, or venture capital. Anyone know what venture capital is? You have half of you in here. So venture capital firms, these are people who you go to when you have an idea and you want to go through and begin it. Now, that's really ultra simplified. Some people call them vulture capitalists because they tend to take a large chunk of your company for your idea. And so I'll talk a little bit of difference between a venture capitalist firm and bootstrapping it, okay? So first place I worked at was Sterling & Wentworth. That was a bootstrap company. And actually, one of the professors down here, Gary Williams, if you end up taking a class from him, he and I worked together. And he was my mentor as I came right out of school. Next company I worked for was Blue Step. And this was a heavy VC-funded company. We raised $20 million during the dot-com days and burned through $20 million and drove it into the ground. Great experience. And then, of course, InMoment. I'll talk a little bit about how we built that company and kind of what it took. Okay, so first thing, the difference between a bootstrap company and a VC company. There's really different kinds of pressures between these two different kinds of companies, mainly because of cash. It's kind of like in a relationship. Most marriages fail because of financial pressure, and I tend to feel that same way about businesses. Same kind of thing. Different kinds of cultures, different kinds of ownership, different kinds of control, and the reality is some companies can only be started one way or the other. Sometimes your idea is so new, no one's willing to invest in it. Other times they look at it, and I'm invested in a pharmaceutical drug company, and they couldn't have done it without VC funding because it's taken them 7 years to get to market, right? So there's differences between this. I'm a little biased towards the bootstrap company, so just keep that in mind as I share this with you. The first thing, I'd like to tell the parable. Can I get a volunteer? Would someone like to come up? I promise to give you something. I need a volunteer, someone who's really willing to give a lot. Come on up, come on up. Okay. What's your name?
Braden.
Braden, thanks for coming up here. You're a brave man. Okay. So what I want you to do is I want you to imagine that we're up in the mountains, okay? There's this beautiful mansion up on the hill. Off to the side of it is a ginormous toy barn with like all the toys and everything else in it, okay? And it's rolling off, the golf course is off to the side. Looks pretty good, right?
Okay, yeah.
Okay. There's a bunch of nice cars parked in the garage too. So here's what I want you to do. If you give 110% and you sacrifice all you have to go through and make this company successful, someday all this will be mine. Go ahead and take a seat. Okay, no, just kidding. There you go. So, a little bit about that. I've seen it happen. Oh my goodness, it's kind of scary actually, where people sacrifice so much only to go off and make someone else a lot of money. I think it's important to have your eyes open to the way the world is structured and the way things work. Because I've seen difficult things happen where people that have made tons of sacrifices don't get to participate in the reward. So, maybe a quick story. We recently acquired a company here about 2 years ago. They were about the same revenue size as us, not run as well. They were more services based, kind of with inside analyst people, and we were more technology based. And so our valuations, ours was a little better, and we ended up acquiring them. Now, we had 110 employees at the time, and they had 180. So it's kind of this thing where we wanted to perpetuate our culture and want to make sure that transferred over to this acquisition. So this company, about the same revenue as us, about the same number of years old. They were about 11 years old when we bought them, and we were about 11 years old. And we spent a fair amount of money on them, about $40 million on them. And the founder there, I'd become friends with. How much money do you think that founder made after 11 years and us buying them for $40 million? How many do you think 5 million? Is that high or low? Probably more? Okay. How many think more? Okay. How many think less? Okay. How many think less than 1 million? How many think less than $500,000? $400,000. And then he had to pay tax. And then he was going through divorce. So that's a separate thing. But it's terrible. Basically, when he was said and done, it was like, whew, out the door. It was like nothing left. Not that that's the most important thing, but I looked at it and said, oh my goodness, here we are buying this company, and the person who sacrificed by far the most ended up walking away with nearly nothing, a couple $100,000, and it was just kind of a crazy kind of thing where they sacrificed so much for so long. So how could that possibly happen? This person had raised money, they'd followed the book, they'd done all the rules. Why did they end up not making money? Yeah. Give up too much too quickly. Yeah. Owed a lot, right? And there's all sorts of things. There's exactly the reasons why it ends up happening that way. They'd raised 5 rounds of money. Okay, gone to the bank 5 times. Rumpelstiltskin, firstborn, all that kind of stuff. Kind of tough. And I was, of course, from my perspective, we were paying a fair market price for the company, but from their perspective, they were losing everything. It's kind of a sad story. And it should be a success story, right? It should be a great thing to celebrate. It created a lot of jobs, created a lot of wealth, but it all went to somebody else. And that's something that's always kind of hurt me as I look at that and go, how do we change that? Well, that's why I like to talk about the bootstrap company. So for me, our bootstrap company, we had my mother-in-law's kitchen table as our conference room table for like a number of years because we didn't have any money, right? The chairs didn't match, and I actually saw an email today go out. It's kind of funny where people were giving away chairs that had been sitting around for too long, and we have a lot of chairs that don't match. It's because we said that's not as important as other things. We didn't have a lot of desks that match either. Matter of fact, in the building we were in, every time someone would move out of the building, the landlord would call us and say, hey, there's some desks on the 3rd floor. They're yours if you want them. And we'd run up there and go grab the desks and haul them back down. And it was, I can't believe how many different types of desks we have. I mean, it's kind of crazy at that. And that's from the early days, so it's changed a little bit. But at the same time, I think it's important to maintain that. If you're spending your own money, how would you spend it, right? Well, if you could get free desks, I go get free desks. And that's what we did. And we would stick to that kind of model. One story about us when we were starting the company out. We'd been at it for almost a year. We were making about $9,000 a month. Not really anything, right? When you think about it. We had 10 employees, and our costs were around $6,000 a month, so there's not a lot of money left over. So I wasn't taking the salary. We were paying everybody dramatically reduced salaries, because when you're spending $3,000 among 9 people, no one's getting a lot, right? There's not a lot to spend. And we had a chance to go out and raise a little bit of money. And I'd raised a little bit through some angels up in Park City. And we had gotten about 3 payments from them. But part of the agreement was that we would go through and hit certain hurdles. Our problem was we were in enterprise sales, meaning large corporations. And large corporations make annual sales, which means your average life cycle, for selling is like 9 months at least. So they kind of knew going into it. We were hopeful, but our first hurdle was 3 months in. If we didn't hit it, we'd have to go back and they could stop paying us any of the other payments. So we'd kind of gotten used to no salaries. Then we started up partial salaries, and then we missed our first hurdle. Kind of sucks. We're sitting there looking at each other going, well, we don't have much money left in the bank. We can't make the payroll this month for what we paid last month because we kind of increased the salaries, right? And I went to each of the employees and said, well, I can go back to the angels. They said they'd be willing to give us more, but they want another X number percentage of our company if we want to go through and keep the payments going. So it's kind of that moment where you're like, okay, we're being stuck between a rock and a hard place. We're out of cash. What are we going to do? Now, we'd had a company named Great Clips that we had been talking to, and we were hopeful that we were going to get an account with. They were scheduled to come in and meet us in July, and this was in April. And I asked each of the employees, all 10 of us, sat each one on individually and asked them and said, what do you want to do? Do you want to go without pay, or should I go back to the angels and give them more of the company and get some more cash so we can keep our payments going? And every one of them said, I don't want to go through and give the company away. I want to go through and work. I want this to be my company when it's said and done. So after going through all 10 employees, they all said the same thing. We decided to hold out. Well, Great Clips showed up in July, and literally we sat around my mother-in-law's kitchen table and we inked a deal. Now, we didn't actually get them deployed till February of the next year. but we were able to go through and do some other things in there. Most people went with about 9 months without pay to go through and make the company happen. But when it was said and done, we ended up owning the company, not somebody else. And we went back to those angel investors and we bought them out because we didn't like the way they treated us. We said, none of that. We don't want to do that anymore. The tough thing is, like I was mentioning regarding the salaries, once you start paying that higher, kind of expected salary, you kind of expect it, don't you? How many of you here are working right now? Okay. What if on your next paycheck, the boss just says, sorry, I don't have enough money to pay your check? How long would you continue working there? Okay? Right? That's the issue. That's the issue when you get to it. So you have to sit there and say, well, what am I going to do? Well, a tough thing about entrepreneurs is we all believe that we can make that first crazy jump the first time. Kind of like this guy. And the problem is, everybody knows as entrepreneurs, you never make it with your first idea. And that becomes a tough thing because you keep trying, because that's one thing that's built into entrepreneurs, is we keep trying. And he almost made it that time. And the reality is, it actually takes 3 times, 3 good failures before you're going to make it. And it's like, it's so hard. It hurts so bad. But that's really the tough thing. Now, the thing is, as entrepreneurs, we all believe we're going to make it the first time, and the second time, and the third time. So we just keep going and keep ramming into that wall, and that's how we end up making it. My opinion is, the entrepreneurs out there who started businesses and been successful, they aren't the smartest, they aren't the brightest, or any of that kind of category. They're the hardest working and most determined. They just don't give up. That's where success lies with most entrepreneurs, is they just refuse to give up. They just keep going. Steve Jobs, everyone talks about being a genius. I just think he didn't give up. He just kept going. Because some of his ideas were, anyone remember the Newton? No one else here except the 2 of us. That was a bad device. Okay, so here's the thing that's kind of interesting. When you go out to raise money, I get 2 or 3 emails a week right now, people wanting to give me money. Hey, I wonder if you're at that point where you need some more capital, and all these kind of calls and emails and stuff, offering cash. Hey, we can get you money for your business. Well, first time you go in, when I raised money for that .com company, you walk into these fancy posh place, Kleiner Perkins is who we raised the money with, high end, it's the highest of Silicon Valley guys, right? And they treat you like you're awesome. They say stuff like this to you when you first come in. And you're like, I'd like some money, man. And they're like really cool to you. And they say, here's 20 million. And you don't realize the kind of obligations you're making at that point in time. And that's the scary thing. Money is a scary thing. You got to be very, very careful about taking any money. And if you can do without it, you do it. Because what's going to happen is you're going to run out of money. Because you're not going to make it on the first try. You will not make it on the first try. So be very careful. Don't set yourself up for failure and having this expectation, oh, we'll make it on the first try. Well, how do you end up having 5 rounds of funding? It's because the first 3 failed. And that's why you end up doing the other 2 is actually to get your company off the ground. Because when you show back up to get money the second time, and you're like totally screwed, right? I mean, darts got you. And you're like looking at him and you're just like, he's going to cut my head off. And that's what happens. And it's really sad. And you go back in, you have to tell your employees, I'm sorry, I just gave away 40% of the company. They now own 75% of the company. And all of us are going to work to make, well, this young man here, all that money, right? And that's a tough thing, right? So you have to sit there and say, let's be careful about this. The other thing that happens, our angels, for example, Park City Angels, 3 investor men, and I'm still associated with them, and I talk with them periodically still. They owned 12.5% of our company for $450,000, okay? That's all the money we used to build the company we have today. I didn't bring any more money in, built it all on just that initial amount of money. We ended up only taking $200,000 from them and buying it back and going to some of my dad's friends instead because I didn't want those people to be a part of our company. Well, even though they only owned 12.5% of our company, Guess who controlled the company? Well, they did, because they had the cash. So if you want to make payroll, you listen to what they say. This isn't always bad stuff. There's good investors out there, there's good advice. But sometimes they make you do kind of crazy things. Like they say, you must hire this person. Kind of like these guys went out and hired somebody to come in and overwatch them.
When we asked Reebok to send us Terry Tate, some people thought we were crazy. But I'm a firm believer in paradigm breaking, outside the box thinking.
Hey, bud.
Break was over 15 minutes ago, match! And since Terry's been with us, our productivity has gone up 46%. We're getting more from our employees than ever before.
You know you need a cover sheet on your TPS reports, Richard. That ain't new, baby. Hey, Janice.
But what's really impressed me is how Terry's become part of the Felcher family. He fits right in here.
It's a long distance call, Doug.
To be honest, I wish Reebok sent us 10 Terry Tates.
You want to play games, G? Well, when it's game time, it's pay time, baby. Wow.
So we were required to hire a certain salesperson, which after we bought the investors out, I was excited to fire. and that's kind of one of those weird things, right? You just don't think about it. I didn't. I mean, and I'd been through raising money and doing other things, but just some things to keep in mind. If you bootstrap your company, you may not have the advice of some of these people, and you need to make up for that somewhere, because you need advice from people. You really do. So, question to you. What did you want to be when you grew up? How many of you wanted to be like an astronaut or fireman? Anybody wanted to be like an Army hero, G.I. Joe? Okay, some of us did, right? We had different aspirations. Well, maybe let's look at this guy here and see what they wanted to be when they grew up.
When I grow up, I want to file all day.
I want to claw my way up to middle management. Be replaced on a whim.
I want to have a brown nose. I want to be a yes man.
Yes, woman. Yes, sir. Coming, sir.
Anything for a raise, sir.
When I grow up,
I want to be underappreciated.
be paid less for doing the same job. I want sunshine blowing up my dress.
So, I love the kid that says, I want to claw my way up to middle management. That's just awesome. So, I mean, I felt like that my second year out of college. I was like, really? I've clawed my way up to middle management. and that's why you're here, right? You're here to do something different. Well, I like to come up with models for myself, mostly for my own frustration, where I try to interpret the world when it gets difficult for me to understand. And one of my first models I came up with for myself is what I call kings, lords, and serfs. And it's to try to help me interpret and make some decisions. And the first group in here is what we call kings. And these are people who we all know somebody like this too. They're just like wildly successful. They either were born into it or fell into it. And you're just like, really? That person had to be wildly successful? and it's kind of, I call them kings or queens, if you will, because the laws of the land don't necessarily apply to them. And so you shouldn't worry about them. Don't have any pride or envy, just kind of push them off. Get them into another category, because they really are another category. You're not going to probably be born into something. You're not going to fall into something. The rest of us have to do something else. So the next big category is what I call serfs. And this is a critical part here. The majority of us end up being serfs. This is not a fun thing. This is the reason you're in college right now, is to not end up being a serf. But if you think about it, these are just people working for the man. They don't know the value they create, therefore they don't get the pay they deserve. Okay? Important piece here. You want to show up and ask for a raise? Know the value you create to get the value you deserve. It is critical in your success in your career, and to go through and change and get away from being just a serf. Last group here I like to call lords. Think of in the old kind of medieval days. If you went off and fought for the land, they gave you a piece of land when you came back and you became a lord. And this is really what I like to talk about as employee entrepreneurs. Those 10 people that helped me start InMoment, they all were employee entrepreneurs. They all ended up being owners in this company. And one fun thing, because we are a bootstrap company, has anybody heard of the company named Vivint? Anybody know how much money they sold for to Blackstone? 2.4 billion. You guys remember that? Sounds like a lot of money, right? A lot of people probably made a lot of money. How many of you guess a lot of people made a lot of money in that? It's probably a setup, right? I'm setting you up. Okay, I am setting you up. Yeah, kind of crazy. We've all heard of Vivint. We all read about it. 2.4 billion. I have 2 of their 9 executives now working for me. Kind of wild. So I know a little bit more of the inside story. I have more employees that have paid off their home than Vivint. It's kind of wild to think about. And it's something I'm extremely proud of. So I've got that many more employees. Actually, I have 3 times the number of employees that have paid off their mortgages than Vivint, because only 9 employees had stock. Kind of crazy. My company, over 100 employees have stock in my company. It's something I'm very proud of, because and I'll get into that here in a second. But again, not everything is as it seems. All right, the employee entrepreneur. I'd like to talk a little bit about how you become an employee entrepreneur. You should think of yourself in every way as an entrepreneur. Doesn't matter if you're going to work for another business or going off to start your own. What I want you to do is use some criteria here to help evaluate things. The first one is what I call fit. And is this what you're good at? Figure out what you're good at. Okay, do you know by now what you're good at? You do. You guys already know what you're good at. The next thing is know where your value is. Now this might require a little bit of internal review. So you know what you're good at, but where's your value? And they're a little different. The last one here is asking yourself the question, can I be a key employee? So the first one, evaluate fit. So there's really 3 questions here. The first one is, what do I like doing? The second is, what am I good at? And the third one is, what are people willing to pay me for it? I view this as the kind of criteria to find a good job. If you can get 2 of these questions answered yes, you found a good job. And that's a good thing, because a lot of people don't have good jobs. So we're going to go through this and kind of talk through a couple scenarios. Let's say, for example, you found a job that you like, but you're not necessarily particularly good at it, and no one's willing to pay you a lot of money for it. What is that? It is. It's a hobby, isn't it? You know, here you go, Steve Starvin artist. So yeah, it's a hobby. What if it's something that you're good at, but you don't like it, and you don't get a lot of pay for it? What is that? You are a serf. I heard it there. It's true, you are a serf. This is a job. This is the majority of people out there working. This is the kind of thing, if you read, we were just talking about a book by Seth Godin talking about this very topic here, where waking up to the fact that the majority of people work and don't get the pay they deserve. Well, you all end up in a job where you're typically good at it. That's just the nature of the beast. You wouldn't get the job if you weren't qualified, right? That's how it starts. But let's say, for example, you're good at it and they're willing to pay you a lot of money for it. Well, guess what? This is a good job, right? And that's why you're in college, to try to segment yourself away from everybody else, to create a new category for yourself, to show how you can apply your value. All right. Next one here, let's say it's something you like and you're good at. What's that? Well, this is a job you can be content with, right? It can bring peace and happiness. This is a good job. You don't have to make a lot of money to be content and enjoy your life. I have a lot of friends, that's exactly what they chose. And that's fine. No one should ever look down and say, oh, what, if the job doesn't make me a lot of money, I'm not going to take it. You know what? Find a job that you like and you're good at. There's a lot to be said about that, because you're going to do it for the next 40 years. So you better try to find that if you can. Now, this is the government job, right? Right? You're not really good at it. It's like that. Okay. I know, it's kind of silly. But what's kind of weird is I just found out 6 years ago, we crossed an interesting line here with the government job, because apparently a category created that I didn't know is you can actually get paid more at this job now. 6 years ago, the public government jobs started paying more than the private sector jobs. I don't know why. Okay. Last one is, let's go find all of them, right? I mean, this is a panacea to me. I love my job. There are days where it's hard. It's still called job, but we don't call it play. It's still called work. But wow, I love what I do. I enjoy it. A lot of challenge. Okay. Next one I want to talk through is the value question. Where is your value? So you're going to have your core skills, and then you're going to have unrelated skills in any job you get. Now, this is a point where you need to be proactive in your job. If you just do what you're told to do, it's really difficult to get out of where you are because that's where you're doing what you're told to do. You're being a good soldier, and it's awfully hard. Now, something I want you to kind of think through, let me put these up here, is, oops, goodness, I'm jumping around. Okay, get it to blend there. It's thinking about the kind of value that you're creating from your job. In your core skill, what you were hired for, you're most likely creating the most value when you're doing that one skill set, whatever it happens to be. The problem is there's all this unrelated stuff associated with the job. And when you're spending your time in that stuff, you're not creating value for the business, and you're not going to be able to command a greater price for your job. You just aren't, because you're getting tied down with this stuff that's not valuable. Return on your investment. Businesses are investing in you, paying you a salary, and they want to see a return on their investment. So if you create more value for the business, well, you can command a greater salary. This is the way it works. I have employees come in all the time and say, hey, I'd like to make more money. I'm like, that's an awesome idea. I think it's great. Let's make some more money. So here's what you need to do. Go make the business some more money. Figure out how to do that. So that means coming and looking a lot of times what the sister skills are, right? With any job you have, try to fill it with something that's correlated to your core skill and go through and leverage your ability more. Again, know what the value is in the business, know how you can offer into it. And you're going to be able to leverage yourself more. So when it comes time for raises, you can go in and say, I've done the following things to raise the business. Well, that changes the equation around dramatically. All right, last one is what I call the steps of keenness. I had, one of my professors here, Gary Williams, so when I worked for him at Sterling Wentworth, I remember my first pay raise. I'd gone through and worked my guts out, and I'd been there about a year and a half, and they waited till you've been there at least a year, and I'd been there about a year and a half. And I was in charge of the product lines there. And I went in for my first raise, and I got a COLA. Does anybody know what a COLA is? Cost of living adjustment. It's a really crappy raise. In other words, it's not a raise. So they basically went and said, well, the inflation is currently at 2%. We're going to give you a 2% raise. It's not really a raise, right? You just basically, it's a cost of living adjustment. It's what they give, retirees. And I was like, wow, this is awesome. And so I asked him, I said, I go, what can I do to get a better raise? And I was really considering leaving at that point in time because I'd done a ton of things there. In my 5 years there, when I left, the business had about 95% of its revenue coming from the products I designed and built. And this was 18 months in, and I was on a roll, and I felt kind of jaded. And he turned to me and he goes, you just need to become more key around here, and then you'll be able to get a better raise. And I asked him to kind of explain that, and he said, well, I don't know, but I'll know it when I see it. So I kind of walked away thinking, great, my future's dependent upon an art interpretation. I'll know it when I see it. So I was like, crap. I wasn't very happy. I really wasn't very happy. And Gary is a mentor of mine, so take that in the right way. But I walked away from that just totally frustrated. So I went through and I came up with a model for myself because I said, I got to figure this out because I'm frustrated right now. Has anyone heard of key man insurance? Sometimes you hear about it in the news, like a sports player takes out insurance on their arm or their legs or something, right? You ever heard of those? Well, key man insurance is when a business takes insurance out on a specific employee because if that employee were to have something happen to them, it would be detrimental to the business. Does that make sense? They are a key man. They're that valuable, they call it key man insurance. Well, I kind of took that concept and came up with what I call my 4 steps of keenness, and we do this with our employees through the reviews. The first one here is, I call it scarcity, but learn something of value that no one else in the company knows. And you become key because you're the only one who knows it, right? Now, sometimes that seems to be a simple thing. Like maybe you're the guy that knows how to fix the printer down the hall or whatever it might be, right? But to learn something of value, I was just talking to one of our employees that does some of our specific training. And I was just talking to him about this very step because right now he's a single point of failure. And I said, you need to duplicate yourself. You can't stay here. Now, it becomes something that's difficult because one of the best things you can do is get to step 1. But it's difficult to sometimes move on to the next step. I also call this the Gollum stage, the precious, because you found this secret thing that you don't want to let go. Well, the most important thing after getting to step 1 is to move on to step 2. And this is to duplicate yourself. Duplicate your knowledge. Businesses struggle to grow because they don't grow their knowledge. It's one of our toughest things right now is growing people. So once you learn that thing, teach someone else how to do it. Now you can go on to do something else. You moved on, right? You're a duplicator of knowledge, you're a trainer. The next step here, I like to call getting outside the box. Thinking about the business. Too many times people just do their job. Well, the reality is the business exists because it's creating revenue. It's growing. What are you doing to contribute to that? Think about it. Find ways. Every single employee in my company thinks about this. I get ideas all the time. We have a whole kind of way that we generate and pull these ideas together. And we call them 5X ideas, right? Something that's going to help us be 5 times faster, leap tall buildings, all that kind of stuff. And we go through and work on them all the time. We go through and share the top ones in our staff meetings. So be an innovator. Go through and get outside the box and help the company grow. The last step is to teach someone else to innovate. Be a leader. So these are my 4 steps to keenness. All right, next one. Oh, we almost had time? Oh, do I have no time left? Oh, goodness. Okay, well, we'll do it in Q&A. I was going to say, I had, well, okay, we'll come back to it. But thank you for coming. Appreciate it.